Oh, don't mind that. That's not sketchy at all.
Hello and welcome to part one of the electric surfboard build. Now what you see here today is a surfboard outline that has been printed from plastic using Fusion 360 and a 3D printer. In this video I'm going to show you how I did all this, so without any further ado, let's get right into that video. Alright everybody, welcome to the video. We're going to jump right into how I designed this board using Fusion 360. I took a pretty simple approach. I wanted something that was large enough that would support my weight in water where I'm not going to be sinking, but also that was small enough which would be maneuverable with an electronic propulsion system. The motor mount system was modeled off a e-foil flight board mounting rack, and in this case I'm building a motor mounting system that will house the motor itself, that will attach to that but also be able to disattach for different types of hookups, like let's say a hydrofoil setup in the future. This isn't meant to be completely waterproof, though I will have it dust and dirt proof. You can see the internal slot there for the wiring from the motor. If you look closely, you can see what would hold a T-style bolt to bolt that motor system to the mount, and then an internal attachment for the motor and leading to the propeller. And here you can see how they would integrate together. You'll see a lot more of the details on how it will be attached when it comes to the following videos showing the assembly phase. I actually had a great success with a lot of the prints and didn't require too many reprints. A big part of that is because of preparation. I highly recommend using the painter's tape for bed adhesion. It does wonders and almost makes them adhere too much where you really have to let the board cool off before you start pulling your prints off of it. I went pretty simple with the PLA filament. It's just standard off Amazon for about 18 bucks a roll. I'm using a 0.8mm nozzle with a bed temperature of 60 degrees Celsius and a nozzle temperature of 225 degrees Celsius. Typically I run this at about 65 millimeters per minute. The prints for the board itself took about 8 days to print altogether. I used a 5% infill and a 0.8mm wall thickness. The objective here was to create a light structure that I could epoxy over and potentially fiberglass over at the end. And this is what I mean with very strong bed adhesion, almost to a fault. So now that all my parts have been printed, it's time to glue them together. I use a pretty simple cement glue for plastics, which worked really well. What was really nice about this glue is that it had a bit of a gooey consistency, but also it was set within about 2 minutes, so I didn't have to sit there holding pieces together forever. My apologies here, I did not videotape gluing the rear few pieces together, so we're just kind of jumping into this one. So this was probably the hardest part of the whole gluing system, because I had built top to bottom on each one, and this is all about fitting those pieces together. They weren't in perfect alignment, a couple millimeters off, so I ended up using clamps to keep them in place as I arranged them as necessary. So I was really happy with how this board turned out. It's about 5 foot 9 inches tall and about 31 inches wide. Right, now that you've seen the build process, let's just talk a little bit about this board and also the future plans with it. So this board stands at about 5 foot 8 inches, 5 foot 9 inches tall. It's about 5.5 inches wide. That gives me about 120 liters of buoyancy, so this should be quite buoyant. I should be able to sit on it and be still above the water, which was part of the purpose. This is all plastic PLA, as I mentioned earlier. The walls are not that thick, and this probably weighs about 5 to 7 pounds. I will be using wood and epoxy and potentially some fiberglass to strengthen this up during the assembly, but that's it for this video. In future videos I'll be covering electronics that I'll be using. I'll be doing more into the assembly of the board itself, and also of course some test driving at the end. I'm really excited about this project. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of different components to it, going as far as battery assemblies, testing electronics, and so on. I think it's going to be a lot of learning experience for myself, and I hope you get something out of it as well. Anyhow, that's it for part 1. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more parts. Thank you, and have a good day.